Welcome back. I'm Travis with Linux Academy. In the previous lesson, we started to learn a little bit about the Docker CLI. We started working with two of the management commands, Docker container and Docker image. Now in this lesson, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about creating containers. We're going to learn about some of the flags, as well as what happens when we just go and execute a Docker container run. So let's start off by running a Docker container run with the help flag and see what options come back. One thing I want to point out is that we do need to use --help and not -h because the -h flag is reserved for something else. As you can see, we have a lot of flags coming back. Now we're not going to go and cover all these options here. We're mainly going to focus on what I have to the right of my screen. Okay, so let's go and execute a Docker container, run, and then BusyBox. When we go and execute a Docker ls, you can see that the container is not running. And the reason why is because it went, executed its command, and then it stopped. So let's use the -a flag to take a look at our container here. As you can see, the command is sh. When the container starts up, it's going to go and execute sh. And that command is going to execute and then quit. It's not going to continue running in the foreground. So when this happens, it means our container is going to act more like a task than a long-running process. A container is a long-running process when the command that is being executed stays in the foreground and doesn't exit. In the case of our Nginx container in the previous lesson, when the container starts up, it's executing Nginx, and Nginx continues to run up to the point where that container is terminated. In some of these instances, when we go and execute a task, we don't exactly need the container to hang around. So we can use the --rm flag to have the container automatically get deleted once it's completed. So let's go and revisit our BusyBox run here, and then go and add in the --rm flag. Okay, so when I go and I execute Docker container ls-a, we should only see one instance of BusyBox. Now we're going to go and execute a Docker container run for Nginx. And when I run this, it stays in the foreground. Obviously, this isn't exactly ideal, so I'm going to go ahead and break out. Now I can go and run this command again using the -d flag. -d flag is going to go and detach us from the container and run the container as a background process. Now when I go and execute a Docker ls, you'll see that we have our Nginx container running. And when I execute it with the -a flag, you can see I have a stopped container from my previous Docker run for Nginx. Now let's say I want to go and attach myself to a container when I go and I start it up. Now I can use the -i flag, which is going to keep standard and open even if we're not attached to the container. And then I can use the t flag, which is going to go and allocate a sudo tty to the container. So let's go and specify BusyBox. And now I'm at the prompt for the container. If I do an ls, I'm running ls on the actual container itself and not on the Docker host. And this is nice because I can then go and configure my container and then take a snapshot by executing Docker container export. And then I can go and import the tar archive that was created using Docker image import. So for now, I'm just going to go and exit out of the container. Okay, so before we continue, I'm going to do some quick house cleaning. I'm going to go and execute a Docker container prune -f just to go and clear out any of my stop containers. Now another thing I can do is I can use the --name flag to go and specify a name for my container. When we go and execute a Docker container run and we don't specify the container name, Docker's going to go and generate one for us. So in this instance, I'm going to call this one my_BusyBox. And we're going to go and specify the BusyBox image. And when I go and execute a Docker container ls-a, you can see that the first container coming back is my BusyBox. And underneath it is our Nginx container, which has a randomly generated name. Now, before I go and close out this lesson, there's a few additional flags I do want to talk about. There's the -p flag, which allows us to go and publish a containers port by mapping it to a port on our Docker host. We also have the -v flag, which allows us to go and bind a mount volume. We can also go and attach a file system mount to our container using the mount flag. And we can also configure networks. Now, all these flags I'm going to be talking about in more detail in their own lesson. Okay, so that's it. Go ahead and mark this lesson complete.